What do you add? It's Paul from Wicked Acorn. I got some new buttons today. Let's see if I can get them to work. Last time I left you, we were talking about uh, some place in Greater Manchester, our Where Is It photo. And we're going to look at another photo in Greater Manchester for our next Where Is It on Monday, I guess. And this is also one in Greater Manchester. I'll let you have a look while I get a sip of tea. Now, what was I going to do? So that is also a place in Greater Manchester for our Monday video. I was going to switch something here. Oh, the chat. That's what I was looking for. Chat's gone away. Oh, hey, Asterix is there. Hello, Asterix. That's what I was looking for. I was trying to turn the chat back on. It keeps disappearing on me. So, does anybody know where this place is? It's in Greater Manchester. Anyway, our last photo was also in Greater Manchester, and it is in Oldham. And the photo on the left is from 1911, I think, and the one on the right's from 1974, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't have those notes here. But the reason we're going to talk about Oldham is because this guy lived in Oldham. And his name is William Joyce, and he lived in Oldham a couple of times. He wasn't born in Oldham. He was born in Ireland. He wasn't known as Lord Hee Haw, but we'll get to that in a minute because it happened this day in history on the 19th of September, 1939. William Joyce, aka Lord Haha, made his first Nazi propaganda broadcast. Bradbury Motorcycles, is that the name of the place, or 1911 that photo is? You don't remember that one, Asterix, unless it was still around in our time. Today in history, so we're going to get to William Joyce, Lord Haha, in a minute, but I have another this day in history is William Hesketh Lever, somebody I'm sure you've all sort of heard of. He was born on the 19th of September, 1851. And we have a, oh boy, we have a short video. I thought I got rid of that sound. We have a short video to look at about William Hesketh Lever. Just a short video. This is back, I've mentioned I used to make shorts, and I stopped making them. Yeah, a motorcycle maker from Oldham, were they? I know the shop was there, but the motorcycles were made there, were they? Very interesting. Got a short video about William Hesketh Lever, and I'll tell you a little bit more when we come back from the video. The video is only like a minute.
Meet William Hesketh Lever, a man you've probably never heard of, but you use his products every day. He began in a grocery store in Bolton, earning a shilling a week, and went on to become one of the richest men in the world. In 1884, he unveiled Sunlight Soap, forever altering our perception of cleanliness. He built Port Sunlight, not just a soap factory, but a visionary utopian village, setting entirely new standards for workers' well-being. He intended to extend his vision to the Belgian Congo, where he sourced essential raw materials. However, the reality was far from utopian. The conditions for the workers were often deplorable, enduring hardships little better than slavery. Lever's dream didn't fully materialize in this colonial venture. His story is a paradox, a man of great philanthropy and progressiveness, entangled in the moral complexities of the era's colonial exploitation. William Hesketh Lever, a man whose legacy blurs the line between sinner and saint. Meet William Hesketh.
So yeah, it's a curious. Did I change that hotkey? I meant to. Um, yeah, curious man. He he definitely blurred the line between sinner and saint. Uh, the whole thing in the it was basically a slave plantation collecting palm oil, and Henry Ford had one there as well. So it was, and then he had, Port Sunlight, which was, you know, apparently a great place for the workers, for the common man. So it was a strange situation, but I was at his. He had a home in Rivington Pike, you may know, and their first motorcycles were okay. Asterix knows who we're talking about. Lord Haha. Yep. Yeah, a bicycle with a motor clipped on it. That's what a motorcycle is, isn't it? Uh, Rivington Pike, is it? And I went there several years ago, and I wanted to make a video about it, but it was completely shrouded in fog. And I took video, but it's kind of useless video for doing a YouTube video because the place was completely enshrouded in fog. I'm sure I'll use some of the clips, but if every clip is like that, you can't see what's going on. It doesn't really do justice to the place. But it was absolutely fascinating because it was like I had descended into Middle Earth, even though I was going up. It was like going into Middle Earth somewhere with all these ruins and follies and things that he had built there. And yeah, it was quite the adventure. It was like Middle Earth. It felt like Middle Earth. It was just like you couldn't see 40 feet in front of you. Everything was just fog, which I'm very used to, but it was very magical uh, being up there. But a little note on Rivington Pike. In 1913, he had a house there. In 1913, suffragette Edith Rigby set fire to Lever's bungalow on Rivington Pike in Lancashire, and she was a member of the Women's Social and Political Union. Uh, they had some radical views, and they did some nasty things. They protested the government's continued refusal to grant women's suffrage, and they burned down his house, or she burned down his house. And it was really weird. They didn't, nobody knew why they burned down his house because he was actually a proponent of women's suffrage, known to be a proponent of women's suffrage. And so nobody knew why she chose his house. She, I mean, other than, the suffragettes were, a little leftist, shall we say, and anti-capitalist maybe, and him being a, capitalist. But nobody knows why she chose his house out of all the houses she could have burned down, uh, other than it was up on this hill that everybody could see it burn down. So she was convicted of arson and sentenced to 9 months of hard labor. And the bungalow was completely destroyed. So back to Lord Haha. He made his first Nazi propaganda broadcast on this day in history, and that photo, that is it's from some propaganda film that the government made, the cartoon there. And this is another propaganda film. The other one was called Tokyo Jokio, depicting Nazi collaborationist radio announcer William Joyce, also known as Lord Haha. And this is another one. This is another spoof. That one, you can see that one on YouTube. That one's on YouTube. And it's, he didn't look like this, of course, but they called him Lord Haha because they perceived him as having a posh accent. I don't think he sounds that posh myself, but that's how he was described. And there you go. What can I say? They described him as having a posh accent, you know, one of those ho 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 ho. Yes. Um, so that's how he got his name, Lord Haha. Some journalist pinned the name on him, and his name was William Brooke Joyce, born the 24th of April 1906, and died on the 3rd of January 1946, and we'll get to that. He was nicknamed Lord Haha. He was an American-born fascist and Nazi propaganda broadcaster during the Second World War. After moving from New York to Ireland and subsequently to England, Joyce became a member of Oswald Mosley's British Union of Fascists from 1932 before finally moving to Germany at the outset of the war, where he took Nazi German citizenship in 1940. So there we go. I think that note should have been on here. There's Mosley, and that's the BUF flag, the British Union of Fascists. In 1932, Joyce joined the British Union of Fascists under Sir Oswald Mosley and swiftly became a leading speaker. Praised for the power of his oratory, the journalist and novelist Cecil Roberts described a speech given by Joyce. Thin, pale, intense, he had not been speaking many minutes before we were electrified by this man. So terrifying in his dynamic force, so vituperative, vituperative, I don't know that word, and so vitriolic, vituperative. In 1934, Joyce was promoted to be the BUF's director of propaganda. He was the main guy. Was there a Hesketh Motorcycles? No, that wasn't an intentional connection. I'll have to look into that for the next time. So this was, he had a big connection with Greater Manchester. He lived in Oldham as a child. His parents moved to Ireland, and his mother was from Oldham. And they left Ireland, left America, moved to Ireland, left Ireland, moved to Britain here in Oldham, and lived on Brompton Street in Oldham. So I found this fantastic newspaper article from December 18th, 1945 in the Manchester Evening News. So this was, this tells the story of Joyce. So I'm just going to switch over here and I'm going to play this video whilst I read the article. It's not long. Just got to switch cameras here. So this is a video, the Cooperative Wholesale Society, and it's just it's on the channel there if you want to look it up. It's from the after the Blitz in Manchester. So this is just something as a background, so you don't have to look at me reading the article. But this is on my channel if you want to see it, and we'll let her roll. There is sound on the actual video, but I got it turned off there now. So William Joyce is an inordinately proud. William Joyce is inordinately proud of the long disfiguring scar on his face. And in February 1936, at an open-air fascist demonstration at the Albert Croft Miles Platting, Manchester, he described it as a scar of honorable as one received by a German officer in a duel. Joyce received the scar 2 years earlier when his face was slashed with a razor in a little cafe less than 100 yards from the Manchester Cathedral. He spent most of his treacherous political life in the North. He was an overbearing snob and an arrogant braggart. He possessed all the unpleasant characteristics of a bully, with perhaps one exception. He was not afraid of personal danger. He had supreme self-confidence and thought his good physique a safe insurance against attack. But his confidence was rudely shaken when he went to the little cafe near Manchester Cathedral, a favorite meeting place of Jews. This is the ghetto. It was soon after a big fascist meeting in Manchester. Joyce was accompanied by a prominent London fascist. They had celebrated the success of the meeting with liberal quantities of whiskey, but were not drunk. It was past midnight. Inside the cafe, a number of Jews were sitting at tables drinking tea and coffee. The door opened and Joyce and his companion entered. Several recognized Joyce, but no one made a move until Joyce sneeringly remarked, "This is how they treat the Jews in Manchester. This is a ghetto." A few seconds later, Joyce staggered out of the cafe with blood streaming from his face. By this time, excuse me. By this time, the police were on the scene, but Joyce declined police protection. He was taken to a surgery nearby where he had to have 30 stitches in the wound. When about to leave the surgery, he turned to thank the doctor, whom he then learned was a Jew. Joyce, infuriated, said to a companion with an oath, "Take me to another doctor and have these bloody stitches taken out." If Joyce had a fiercer hatred for anyone than he had for the Jews, it was for the police, particularly the English police. £1,000 a year salary. Fascism and the personal power it might bring to him was not Joyce's only obsession. He had two others, women and whiskey. Indeed, his immoral life more than once threatened him with expulsion from the party. He had extraordinary fascination for women and was ruthless in his dealings with them. At this time, as chief organizer of the party in the North, he enjoyed a salary of £1,000 a year, an unlimited expense allowance. He lived well and selfishly. His political intrigues began long before the formation of the British Union of Fascists. Soon after Hitler came to power in 1933, Joyce went to Germany, presumably on a holiday. On his return to London, he became one of the prime movers in the formation of the Imperial Fascist League. The League succeeded well in the south, but gained little support in the north, where it was most wanted. Its influence dwindled, and when in 1934 the British Union of Fascists was formed, Joyce was appointed one of the principal officers. His League followers joined the BUF with him with their slogan, Britain for the British, and lavish displays of the Union. I have to scroll up to the top of the page here. Oh, where does it go? Of the Union Jack. The BUF soon had a membership of many thousands, some of them rich businessmen who subscribed generously. In 1938, there were between 3,000 and 4,000 members in the Manchester area, with another 2,000 sympathizers. Other cities in the North and Midlands also had formidable memberships. Good evening, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're talking about Lord Haha, who lived in Oldham. He was a Nazi propagandist. He did the radio broadcasts. Where were we? 2,000 sympathizers. Other cities in the North and Midlands also had formidable memberships. The watchful police, Joyce's territory as northern organizer, embraced Lancashire, north as far as Carlisle, part of Yorkshire, and south to the Midlands, to the boundary of Birmingham. Manchester was the centre of his activities, and for some time he had a suite of rooms at the now blitzed Victoria Hotel. He established his first Manchester headquarters near Lee Street and Northumberland Street. Higher Broughton, some months after his face was slashed. As a rule, he made no secret of his movements and was always to be seen in the evening sipping whiskey in the bar or lounge of the Victoria Hotel. He made it his business to see that the police knew when he was staying at the hotel. There were other times, however, when he preferred the police to remain in ignorance of his visits, and on these occasions he would sleep at the Higher Broughton headquarters. Little did Joyce know that even these nocturnal visits were known to the police. Several police officers from various forces in the country, including Manchester, were members of the BUF. Joyce always suspected there were police spies, but his view was not accepted. He was trailed night and day for years, but he was shrewd and cunning and rarely gave the police in the North any cause to detain him. He refused to prosecute the man who slashed his face, and though he was the instigator of many clashes between Jews and fascists, he was never in evidence when they took place and could not therefore be questioned. So he met Hitler. He was just one of the principals of a political movement which the police regarded as subversive, but which the government of the day looked upon with a benign eye. One day the Higher Broughton headquarters were broken into and the furniture was smashed. It was said to be the work of enemies of fascism, and Joyce moved the headquarters to Corporation Street above a cafe where he frequently had morning coffee. By the beginning of 1937, following the big fascist rally at the old Free Trade Hall, Joyce's activities had taken on a more sinister appearance. He was no longer just the northern organizer. He was in fairly close association with the German consuls in Liverpool and Dublin. In that year, Joyce again went to Germany, this time to Berlin, where he was received by Hitler. He came back puffed out with more self-importance than ever. It was said that on his return from Berlin, he was appointed the deputy leader of the British Union of Fascists. There is little doubt that at his meeting with Hitler, Joyce became the liaison between fascism in this country and Germany. He adopted a dictatorial attitude to all under him and became feared and hated. He ordered that all should address him as Sir. Zuniga was on a holiday in Iceland. He was now rarely in one place more than a day at day or two at a time, and in Manchester he would often avoid staying at the Victoria Hotel and would stay at a house occupied by a colleague in Victoria Road, Fallowfield, or at an address in Manchester Road, Shaw, near Oldham. Within a few weeks of his return from Berlin, he went for a holiday to Iceland, where it is known he contacted the German consul, who, after war was declared, was sent back to this country. The consul's wife and two daughters were imprisoned in Strangeways jail and later interred in the Isle of Man. When the consulate was searched, enough armaments were found to equip between 300 and 400 men for a long time, enough to take Iceland if everything had gone according to German plan. So that was the whole plan of the thing. That was they wanted to take Iceland as a port, and I can't remember. I remember looking into that story, but I can't remember the rights of it now. By this time, he was believed to be firmly established in the German espionage service. He had fairly frequent meetings with Lehmann, the German consul in Liverpool, and began making trips to Dublin, where he had many secret meetings with the German consul there. Later, Lehmann was appointed German consul in Manchester, but the Foreign Office refused to approve it. His voyages to Dublin had become monthly missions, and the special branch of the CID in Manchester and the North generally watched his every move. Preparing to leave, he was now friendly with Margaret White, with whom he married at Manchester Register Office in 1939. With the dawn of 1939, things were getting too hot for the fascists and for Joyce in particular. He knew he was being shadowed wherever he went. Manchester and the county police had ample evidence to arrest him on comparatively trivial charges, but they learned more about him and the people whom he was meeting by allowing him his freedom. In June of 1939, he became associated with an Englishwoman married to a German. The German had established a small business as a tool merchant, which was a convenient cloak for his political activities. Joyce was now finding it more and more difficult to keep in constant touch with his Confederates, especially in Manchester, and he used to meet the German outside the city boundary at a house in Shrewsbury Street, Old Trafford. In the same month, he made 2 urgent visits to the German consul in Liverpool and 1 to Dublin. Shortly after his passport had been issued, military intelligence wanted to arrest him. Somehow, Joyce got to hear about this and made preparations to leave hurriedly. The Pimpernel escapes. The news was cleverly spread that he intended to travel on the midnight train to London and catch the Dover boat the next day. Officers were awaiting his appearance at Dover, but the wily Joyce had changed his plans. He had caught an earlier train and sailed on the Channel steamer the previous afternoon. It is a strange coincidence that every Manchester building in which Joyce spoke before the war was either blitzed or damaged in air raids. The Free Trade Hall, Chorlton Town Hall, Victoria Hotel, the old BUF headquarters in Higher Broughton, and the Register Office where he was married. So that is an article from December 18th, 1945 in the Manchester Evening News. Very interesting, not something we hear about Lord Haha much, and Mosley, but they were both heavily involved in Manchester, and they used to meet at the hotel there. And what's the name of that hotel? The name escapes me now. Someone tell me the name of that hotel. Everybody knows the name of this hotel, and for some reason it said the Midlands Hotel. That's where they used to meet, he and Mosley. And of course, that's one of the stories that they wanted the hotel as the the Nazi headquarters in Germany when they won the war and invaded Britain. That's one of the stories why it wasn't bombed. I don't know if there's much truth in that. I don't know how accurate they were with their bombing, but who knows? Uh, Here is a so of course we know how the war turned out, and uh, this is a script and the microphone that Lord Haha used for his last broadcast. And his last broadcast was on the 30th of April, 1945, the day Hitler killed himself. And he was loaded drunk. And the recordings are out there. You can listen to the recordings, and I'd love to play them for you, but of course you know why I can't do that. So yeah, there's recordings of Lord Haha out there of Joyce, and his last one is out there for you to hear as well. He's loaded drunk, and so he escaped. He escaped Germany. Went to where was it? He went to on the 28th of May, 1945. Joyce was captured by British forces at Flensburg, near the German border with Denmark, which was the last capital of the Third Reich. That's where, what was his name? The admiral who was then in charge. Dönitz, was it? Near the German border, which is the last capital. So he's walking down the road. He which he wasn't supposed to do, but him and his missus had a fight, and they had a fight, and anyway, so he went for a walk, and he walked back the road for some reason, which he knew better to not do that, but he walked back the road, and up ahead there were two British soldiers collecting firewood, and he's like, "Oh, well, what am I gonna do?" Right? Like, so he couldn't, run. So he just kept walking, and he spoke to them in French, and then spoke to them in English. Uh, Told them, there's some more wood over here, and two of the soldiers looked at each other. They recognized his voice instantly, and they asked him, "Are you Joyce?" And he went into his pocket to get his papers. They thought he was going for a gun, so they shot him in the arse once, but it made 4 wounds. It was a through and through, right through the 2 cheeks. 4 wounds from one shot. So the 2 intelligence officers then drove Joyce to a border post and handed him over to the British military police. He was then taken to London and tried at the Old Bailey on 3 counts of high treason. Inquiries in the U.S. Adduced in evidence at his trial found that Joyce had never been a British subject. So this is where the trial gets interesting. So he's not a British subject, so how can he be tried for treason? And it seemed that he would have to be acquitted based upon a lack of jurisdiction. He could not be convicted of betraying a country that was not his own. The trial judge, Mr. Justice Tucker, directed the jury to acquit Joyce of the first and second charges. However, the Attorney General, Sir Hartley Shawcross, successfully argued that Joyce's possession of a British passport, even though he had misstated his nationality to get it, entitled him until it expired to British diplomatic protection in Germany, and therefore he owed allegiance to the king at the time he began working for the Germans. So technicality, really, isn't it? But There you go. How can you not call it traitors? But how can you be a traitor if you're not a citizen of the country? Um, there's his Capital Punishment Amendment Act, the sentence of the law. So that's the execution order. I think that's the thing they nailed up outside the prison. And he was executed on the 3rd of January 1946 at Wandsworth Prison, age 39. And another coinky dink, a Germany calling, is his executioner was Albert Pierrepoint. And he was an English hangman who executed between 435 and 600 people in his 25-year career that ended in 1956. So you'd think he would have kept count, but anyway, it's between 435 and 600. And coincidence, the man who executed Joyce, who lived in Oldham, also lived in Oldham. And he owned a pub in Oldham called the Help the Poor Struggler. You guys have strange names for pubs. Help the Poor Struggler was the name of the pub. And it was situated on Manchester Road. And the pub closed in 1990. Its most famous publican was Albert Pierrepoint, the hangman. Albert Pierrepoint executed some of the most notorious villains of the 20th century when he wasn't pulling pints. Before closing time at the Help the Poor Struggler, the landlord would sing Danny Boy. So, yeah, another little coincidence there that... So that's two people from our neck of the woods that you may not have known were from this neck of the woods. Both lived in Oldham. And yeah, the whole Mosley connection. Oswald Mosley was one of the first environmentalists. Yeah, for sure. You know, like, so was Hitler. Hitler was the first guy to start recycling. So, you know, what can you say? Doesn't... Tales from the Hangman's Record is a good YouTube channel to watch. Okay, I'll check that out. Yeah, there... I don't have much time for Oswald Mosley myself. So his first broadcast was today, Joyce's broadcast. And there's... can you see my arrow there? Yes, you can. There's Mosley and there's Joyce there. This is Joyce giving a speech somewhere, I think. And you got to keep your eye out for these guys. They mightn't be dressed like this nowadays. And here's a little point for you to ponder. The phrase, nationalism is the last refuge of the scoundrel, which is a point to ponder these days. It's a misquotation of Samuel Johnson. And his original statement was, patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel, which critiqued the false, self-serving use of patriotic language by his political opponents to conceal their personal interest. Johnson did not condemn all patriotism, but rather this specific cynical brand of false patriotism, which he saw as a dangerous mobilization of the people that could shrink moral horizons to national boundaries. And he was active in the 7 Years' War, what we were talking about last night. He was involved in the 7 Years' War, and he was against slavery. Another interesting thing about I don't know much about this character. It just came up in that quick search. But yeah, that was an interesting thing. So there you go. That was this day in history. We had Hesketh Lever, William Hesketh Lever, and the first broadcast of Germany Calling. So there's our photo for the next time. So I'll leave that for you to have a quick look at. So have a great weekend. We're at the Sailmakers Market on Sunday, every third Sunday of the month. Come by the Sailmakers Market, say hello. And I guess we'll see you in the next one.